So I think the biggest thing
Uh,
right now, I mean, I think the story is still developing, but there's a whole ordeal with, I think a lot of people would probably know, especially in the Philippines. They seem to be pretty big in Philippines. The whole NOS Daily group, I guess, and what they've been doing around trying to essentially um, monetize Kalinga culture, specifically tattooing, and probably the most what would you call
Jarring?
pop no popular
Oh, popular.
most
Sorry.
popular tattoo artist in the Philippines, Apo Wang Ud, who is out of Kalinga and traditionally did old Kalinga tattoos, and not even just Kalinga. I think she would do from everywhere in Cordillera because I think she's learned from traveling around before. So for everybody that doesn't know, there is pretty much this old lady. She doesn't really do it anymore, but anyway, there's a form of tattooing in the Philippines that we do, and all across Asia, really, a lot of areas within Asia,
Mhm.
where you take a stick and a stick with what they used to use, a calamansi
Mhm.
thorn, that would be dipped in some ink, and you would tap that onto the skin, and that would create your tattoo. I mean, they used to do it in a lot of like Polynesian culture, stuff like that as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, our most popular tattoo artist is the Pawang Ud, which is the oldest and pretty much the last. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody in the comments or here. Um, what we call Mambatok, which is like yeah, an ancient tattoo artist essentially. Um, so what Nas Daily was doing is trying to monetize the information on tattooing from Apowang Ud, with Nas Daily, and I think it was called Nas Academy. And there was a lot of people upset with that, and yeah, I want to know. I know Jay, I think you were just getting caught up, but um, yeah, I want to know what you guys thought about that whole situation. I mean, there, yeah, I think the whole thing is still developing. There's still lots of things coming out on both
Right.
sides, and yeah, I don't know. I think Italy had a lot of that information that people are posting and
Mhm.
collecting. Um, yeah, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
so I've been not following it closely, but I've been following some of the um I guess backlash that's come about from our community. I haven't been following much of what his response have been. However, from the timeline that I seem to understand is that following his announcement on his website of those classes being essentially like starting or installed. I think what happened was on his website it was saying coming soon, Whang Academy. So it was promising to be this essentially like an online masterclass through his platform of Apawang teaching how to do and be a mambatok. And so following that announcement from his website, Apawang Ud's granddaughter went to Twitter. Actually, not Twitter, but I think it was inside Facebook group that was shared where on that particular Facebook group, she urged people to not support Nas Daily, and I'm trying to find the exact quote from her right now. If you give me a second,
Well,
my mic.
one of the things when I woke up. I can't remember. Was it Wednesday morning or Tuesday morning? And I saw this stuff, and I was like, "Whoa, man!" Because all I knew about this guy, Nas, his channel on Facebook, and I guess he's also on YouTube as well. But from what I knew about him, he was basically spreading, like different things about cultures all over the world, and kind of putting a positive light. This is as far as I know. So just as a consumer or as somebody who just kind of is influenced by an influencer. All I knew was that this guy was putting out some decent content in regards to other people's cultures, like what they're doing in terms of like recycling, and was it Singapore or something like that, and then helping people learn about the culture in the Middle East and different areas, and also kind of, I guess, there's a lot of conflict in terms of the Israeli-Palestine thing going on, but he's addressed certain issues with that as well. But as far as I knew, I thought his content was something that you could that actually brought awareness to people. But then there was when there was all these other things that came out, it just kind of was like, whoa, man. It just goes to show sometimes you can't trust everything that you see, because in the end, for a lot of these influencers, it seems like the most important thing to them really is getting the likes. Getting the likes and making sure that they're getting the huge fan base. And one of the things that I've recognized over the years, and many people can see this, is like, what's interesting about Filipino culture and the Filipino people, influencers and people on YouTube and Facebook have realized, like, if you can get a fan base from the Philippines, it's like you get a rabid fan base, and that like increases your numbers, increases your subscribers, increases your likes, and increases like, and so like, I think people have caught on to that. A lot of influencers have caught on to the fact that if you can get on the good side of Filipino people, they start making videos that are just random. And so now I'm starting to think like, man, how many people can you really trust who are going down to the Philippines or trying to make a video on like eating Filipino food? You know what I mean? Just so that they can get the hey, I like all the fans from the Philippines, or even from abroad. All the Filipinos in the diaspora saying like, oh man, I'm feeling the Filipino pride, because that's us, right? It's like we've been so Filipinos in general, from Igorot folks to just all over the up and down the islands. It's like in some ways, it's like we are trying to find ways to kind of validate our people, and that's, there's nothing wrong with that. But it seems like people are even taking advantage of that, the heart of our culture, people being proud of who we are, because we are trying to find like, like positive role models for our kids, or, and see things like this. And I guess we'll go into it later, but, like the Olympics, seeing like our first gold medal, our first like official gold medal through weightlifting, like it's like, of course, you're going to feel that Pinoy pride and stuff, and people have figured it out online. And they know that if they can get something about the Philippines and the Filipino people to get on board, they're getting a whole bunch of subscribers and likes from us. And because we're not just in the Philippines, we're everywhere. And of course, I mean, you see the same model, what they're trying to do with China, like Disney trying to make sure that they're appeasing China, making sure they're getting, that money base out of China. And there's billions of people over there. So, for smaller influencers, I think they're definitely recognizing that if they can get anybody from the Philippines, they're gonna have a rabid fan base, because we do love seeing our own people. I mean, I remember when we were young, and like in the 80s, anytime you could see somebody that looked Filipino or was Filipino, we'd go nuts. We'd be like, Filipino, like you'd just call the whole family to come and watch the television. If Ernie Reyes Jr. popped up in that TV show, and like you get like 25 people in the living room just to watch Ernie Reyes Jr. do that 30-minute TV show back in the 80s. I forgot what it was called. Man. Oh yeah, Pacquiao was huge. Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Entire country.
Sorry, that was my long.
Nasir Yassin, he's the influencer behind NAS Daily. He's got over 20 million followers, and so essentially, what he has, I've watched a lot of his videos, and they're generally pretty well made. The biggest thing is that he tries to dive into people's cultures. and to try to dive into just bringing some sort of understanding that maybe most folks wouldn't know. And most of the time, he's delved into stuff about like Arab culture. There's a lot of that material on there. Arab-Israeli issues. He's dived into a lot of that. And so I wouldn't say that the guy is coming there with malice in his heart to kind of like, it. I mean, people are generally going to make money. That's the whole idea too. You're going to try to make money. Definitely with Filipino people, we love being on the internet and stuff like that. And we like using it, and folks know that it's a tool for communication. But I think the biggest takeaway that I'm observing is I don't know if people really know how diverse Filipino culture is. If he knows, I'm sure he knows Filipino people. I'm sure he knows like it's Filipino all over the Palestine, Israel, and the Arab world. I mean, and generally we serve in a certain class, which is an underclass. And so people are familiar with Filipino folks and have sometimes just close ties with Filipino folks. But I do feel that some of the nuances within our culture, specifically Igorot culture, Kalinga culture, um, I don't know if that's known to people really outside, or the acknowledgement of how greatly diverse cultures within the Philippines are. We are not a homogeneous society, per se. I mean, we barely like lowlanders, especially when lowlanders make comments about us. Let alone now other folks from other cultures, looking like they trying to exploit us too. I think there's a class issue that's certainly going on in terms of like how Filipinos are regarded around the world. I think that it's definitely exploitable in terms of like, hey, Filipinos want to grab, we want to find ways, tangible ways, concrete ways to embrace our culture. And how do you do it? How do you wear it? And a lot of people want to wear it. I mean, that's just the darn truth. My kids were asking me, "Hey, Dad, how come we don't really do tattoos like the way we used to?" Hey, that's because we have clothes. I mean, and a lot of it was simply because, hey, we don't. If we have clothes, then that kind of like indicates status. It indicates how we're gonna posture within our culture and the culture outside. But now those tattoos, because we don't necessarily have to wear ourselves that way. There's a deeper meaning of a whole lot of people who need to reclaim um, an essence of who they are and where they come from. And so I think what's a little bit concerning about me is that it has a meaning amongst our people per se, amongst Kalingas, amongst Igorot people, and not if this thing was to go through, essentially teaching people like how to do our own culture to people like who don't know the nuances of it. Now that's appropriation. And appropriation then becomes stuff like, hey, people then lose where they get this stuff from. Because they won't know. They would just find it on the NAS Daily Academy and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, I learned this from that. And, I'll do all these fancy designs and all of this. And so then what's the meaning? Okay, teaching people how to make money. But
important thing to note too, regarding that is a lot of people have been pointing to the fact that one of the bad things about the whole NAS Daily Academy thing with Upalong it is the fact that it's not something to be shared,
right, and that's lost.
particularly to the people outside. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because a lot of the people have been commenting on the fact that how the practice is meant to be. How's my mic, by the way? How the practice is meant to be passed down is generationally.
Yes,
Not in the way of like the Western standard of a master and apprentice. How the But tribe and how historically how the tattooing and Mambatuk has been done and from what I understand, how a lot of our spirituality's been done is essentially by blood. So, one of the things that a lot of people were really pissed off about was the fact that he's not honoring that. He's not honoring the nuances of the culture because how the practice is meant to be passed down is from grandmother to daughter, right? From mother to daughter, and that's how it's been. That's how they're preserving it. And to sort of correct on what you were saying earlier, Gerald, is that she isn't. She was technically the last living Mambatok, right? But not anymore because her granddaughters are learning from her. Her granddaughters that are pretty much like 5 years younger than us and stuff,
But
right?
she's the oldest surviving one right now. Is that correct?
Right, right.
I
If
think
if
so.
you want to make it a headline, however, technically and actually, like there are still buttocks around
Yeah,
Kalinga,
yeah. So it is
right?
spreading, and people are learning, and I'm
Exactly.
sure because
Because of her. Because
yeah,
of her.
because of her, and I'm sure it's like opening up
Yeah,
in other areas
definitely.
in the mountain.
Definitely.
I mean, like
Yeah.
people are starting to
Yeah.
recognize, oh
Yeah.
yeah, there
And
is a cultural value, you know. So
one
And
one
to
thing
me,
to really yeah.
yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. One thing to but before you go. One thing to like we really can attribute to her being her in the fact that there is proliferation of the tattooing art. It is due thanks to her, right?
yeah,
Is what I
right.
was gonna continue on. But go ahead,
Eh,
Jay.
Yeah. So